This is the first official wrestling interview here in 2023 on Sportswire Radio, and I promise you, this is going to be worth it because our guest here tonight and this afternoon, depending on wherever you may are, is had a decorated career, especially when it comes to the FWE, where he was a backyard wrestling stand-up. You remember those legendary wars he had with Hollywood and Damon and also KOG along his side. And he also won numerous championships there, including the Hardcore, North American, and the Heavyweight Championship. You might have remembered him as the Russian Nightmare, but he's gone through some changes. He's got a lot in his plate. We're going to get into all of that here. And of course, he is the pride of Buffalo. And Buffalo, of course, unfortunately, is a huge part of the sports world right now and different reasons. But we'll get into all of that shortly. So, wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report, number one Global Sports Show with backyard wrestling legend Vinny Meyers. Vinny, how
How's
you
it
doing?
going, Tom?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Well, we have a lot to get into here on Sportswire Radio with you. Congratulations. You've won a participation trophy. You are the first wrestler of sorts to have been on here in 2023. We obviously kicked things off with a Raw pregame show with a podcast that's called the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, but that's here nor there. But Vinny, a lot to get into here, a lot to look back on in the past, and certainly we'll talk about the present and the future. But set the tables for us, Vinny Meyers, on how it all started and how you became the legend that we all knew in places like FWE.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you very much. It's an honor to be on the show. It's an honor to be on this radio station. I've been watching you guys for a long time now, and I said I had to be on this show.
I appreciate that very much.
I had to see what the rev's about.
Well, we'll see if it meets the description, but we'll find out, right?
Absolutely. So basically, it all started for me in 2017. I have a friend named Ethan. He goes by his stage name of Bull Kills. He makes music. And his friend, his name was Darren. He had a wrestling company called SWA. I wrestled with them for about 2 weeks. Then they kind of went off the grid. So after that, I shortly joined Extreme Tri-City Wrestling, XCCW.
Okay.
And I wrestled for them for 2 years. Then I want to say January 2018 is when I debuted in FWE and I started my journey as a Russian Nightmare. Then shortly after, I went to the Standard Nightmare, Vinny Meyers, alongside with KOG, my best friend in crime. Then recently, I just turned on him at the last show where I hurt myself. I turned on him, so that was pretty cool. That was really cool.
I don't know if it was so cool for KOG that you turned on him. I'm sure for you it might have been good, but certainly for him, I'm sure he might be reeling from that a little bit, no?
Absolutely.
All right. I mean, so certainly you've had a journey that's hit some different places in the road. And I mean, talk to me, though, about the FWE and why you had so much success there and what made that company. And I've obviously seen some of your matches, some of your wars with Hollywood and Damien. I know there was other matches out there, but what made that company such a place where, you shined?
Honestly, the only reason I had so much success there is because I was actually well respected from all the athletes there, all the wrestlers, all the fans. They all loved me. I was one of the best heels in that company, and I believe I still am to this day. Um, Unfortunately, I've had a few run-ins with them where I've recently ended my contract with them as of December 22nd, 2022.
Wow,
And
what an irony there. 12/22/22, you end your contract there. I mean, very few times you get kind of a day, a year, and in a month that kind of almost rhyme coincidentally. And that was one of those. It was almost like in the last decade where you get 01, 01, 01, 02, but 12/22/22 sort of rhymes as well here. So that's kind of interesting
absolutely.
there.
And January 15th of this year, and next Sunday, I believe, I'm debuting in a company called House of Misfits Entertaining.
Oh, okay. So what
So,
is that about House of Misfits Entertainment? And I also see
um,
we have somebody here that's on the stream, but I don't think they realize that they're not supposed to be a part of the stream here. I don't know if there's somebody. Did you give out the link? Because you gave out the wrong. That's the
yes,
link for you to come on.
so, the person that's trying to get on is actually my brother. I
Oh,
wrestled with
okay.
him tons of
Oh,
times.
okay.
All my
Okay.
matches of 2022 were against him. Hardcore
Oh, okay.
matches
So
to
maybe we'll
first
bring
blood
him on.
matches.
Maybe we'll see. Okay. Interesting.
So he's a well respected athlete also. In my eyes, he's well respected. Um, so back to home wrestling. Home wrestling is originated by the owner of XTCW, the company I wrestled for
Mm-hmm.
a couple years ago, basically. And it's very cool because they kind of transform into independent wrestling from backyard.
Ah.
So I
Okay.
won't be doing backyard wrestling. I'll be officially a professional wrestler,
Well, let's
which is
talk about that. Let's talk about that for a second because I interview both. I obviously do far more professional wrestlers, but I've worked with some backyard wrestlers. Obviously, we had C2K on last week. John the Rock Jackson's on next week. And we've also worked with a company called Wrestling Championship Entertainment. And some wrestlers I've interviewed in the UK, a few of them, not many of them, have backyard wrestling experience. So I'm curious then for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, Vinny Meyers, and talk to me then maybe about this transition going from a backyard wrestler to a professional wrestler and what's that going to be like?
um honestly, I'm not 100% sure yet how it's gonna feel or what it's gonna bring to the table as Vinny Myers, because obviously it's gonna be a while till I get my first match. Um, as of right now, all I can say is I'm looking forward to training more. Just getting in the ring with other wrestlers. Um, we have a wrestler that actually just got done training and wrestling Daniel Garcia from All Elite Wrestling,
Yep. AEW,
and
yep.
as you know, he's a well-respected Buffalo kid as well.
Yep. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Well,
along with
I want to talk about that then, and certainly we'll bring your brother on in a little while from now. I want to get your journey in for a second as well. But I mean, you talk about Buffalo, and obviously, it's a little different, I think, from being in Buffalo versus, let's say, I'm from New York City. So I think everybody and their mother can say, "Hey, I'm from one of the five boroughs, right? Most notably, maybe Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens." But you're from Buffalo, and there are only certain wrestlers. When I think of Buffalo, I think the biggest well-known wrestler from Buffalo would be Beth Phoenix. I think Beth Phoenix certainly would be at the top of the list. But I mean, for you being from Buffalo, I mean, what does that mean into making this transition? And maybe as a follow-up, what are some of the wrestlers that maybe you've aspired to from your hometown that say, you know what, yeah, I want to go out and I want to go make this transition?
well, there's quite a few. Um, First off, let me say the Butcher and Blade. I
Yep.
look up
Yep.
to the Blade.
I just pulled them out in AEW trading card set, which I did a stream for on Saturday. You might
That's
have missed
cool.
that part, but yes, I know they
That's
are,
very
sure.
cool. Um, I'm well familiar with the Butcher as well as this band. Every Time I Die from Buffalo.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite bands growing up as a kid.
Okay.
I'm well big into heavy metal music. That's
We'll
what
talk about
inspired
that.
me as
Well,
an
we play music on Sportswire, so we will definitely get into the music side in a minute. But
all right.
continue.
Um, Another wrestler. I don't think he's been on AW Dynamite or any big shows. I know he's been on dark shows quite a few. His name is Kevin Blackwood.
Okay.
Kevin Blackwood is a great wrestler in my eyes, and he's kind of on the dark side, which is awesome. Kind of like Jimmy Havoc a little bit,
Yep. Yep.
that kind of stuff. I'm well into. Um, but yeah, that's the wrestlers I really look up to. That's
I
from
mean, when you
Buffalo,
think,
at least.
yeah, I mean, when you think about Buffalo, I mean, there are certain wrestlers that I feel like when you say New York City, there's such history because you have Madison Square Garden, you have the Elks Lodge, you have all the different things where it took place in the different places. We work with a company somewhat called House of Glory. Everybody is, oh, it's Amazing Reds Company. And you think about obviously and Johnny Rods and all the guys that used to train in downtown Brooklyn and Red Hook over there with guys like Taz and the Dudleys. And it's a long list. But when I think about Buffalo, off the top of my tongue, I don't think there's as many that you could say, oh, you know what? They made it like those in New York City or Long Island, which is almost kind of like the sixth borough. So that's why I kind of think it's a big deal to speak about that. And again, I think most notably Beth Phoenix is probably the most notable wrestler to come out of Buffalo because she's a WWE Hall of Famer and she was a great broadcaster. And obviously, she's married to Edge and she's had this success where she crossed over into a massive world. I mean, certainly then let's go back a little bit into the journey and certainly in backyard wrestling. I mean, was there moments that have stood out most in your career so far that says, you know what, this was a great moment and this inspired me to say, you know what, I want to make that transition to being a professional wrestler now?
Well, hmm, I do know my first year in the FWE, me, Damon, Kyoji, we all went over to Nickel City Wrestling, which is a local professional wrestling company, and we started training with them. But then
Okay.
the training schedule didn't work with our schedules, so we stuck it with FWE because FWE was twice a month on a Saturday. So it kind of made sense where we would film 3 to 8 shows a day.
Mm.
Our whole day would be filming, match after match, you know, which is interesting, I guess. But being actually in a professional wrestling ring for Nickel City Wrestling, that kind of woke something in me, that
Mm.
woke up the fire and said, I need to step up. I need to not wrestle in the backyard. I need to do something for a career, not just for fun.
Well, you know what, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I do think that it's important to note that, and I want to be as kind as I can when I say this because we still work with a lot of backyard wrestlers on Sportswire Radio. But there is an element, and you know this because now you're going to make the transition here. But there's an element when we see some of your footage and you're wrestling in the backyard of someone's house, and you guys are on one of those trampanzees, and or some wrestlers are I've seen from content from FW, they're fighting like on cement pavement. I mean, if you're going to be a professional wrestler, that's kind of looked upon as if, well, it's not necessarily the most desirable. Now, we work with the company, I want to point out, Wrestling Championship Entertainment, that actually has a real wrestling ring. So they actually, in a way, and God bless them for that, that, to make that transition, you are going to have to be taken seriously. And I think that obviously going from wrestling in some of the elements that you've wrestled in, I mean, has that come up so far, maybe in the training and going into it? And they say, oh, well, you've done backyard wrestling. And, I mean, has that come up at all? Because I do know that some wrestlers have backyard wrestling experience. I mean, the Young Bucks, most notably, certainly the Hardy Boys many, many moons ago. And there are a number of wrestlers. I mean, look, and full disclosure, when I was a kid, about 20, a little over 20 years ago now, maybe a little more than that. When I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, for a period, I did the backyard wrestling, and I did it, and it was like, punching, but we didn't have a wrestling ring. I grew up in Brooklyn. We couldn't put a ring, and we couldn't afford a ring, but we did what we could. You had to certainly do the safest, best way, but we didn't know. We were like little kids. But I mean, there has that been talked about with, let's say, fellow wrestlers that you're training with, that backyard
Um,
wrestling, and go ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's come up multiple times where some wrestlers look down on me because I don't have much training in the professional league, you know, and I know quite a few professional wrestlers that I know personally that I've met in the backyard wrestling because they came and watched quite a few shows because I was on the bill, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
then they basically respect me. I'm not saying that just because I'm like, oh, I'm Mr. Big Shot, but I think I'm well respected. I
Well,
definitely
I
think I'm well respected.
I would add to that, and this is what I say all the time as we are speaking with here, the legendary former Russian Nightmare turned Nightmare now. His name was Vinny Anarchy. He's now Vinny Meyers, and of course you saw him in FWE and some other places, Nichols Wrestling as well, he had mentioned. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I'm the man behind Sportswire Radio. But, I always say this, Vinny, that I feel personally that you're still going out there and trying to compete. So I always appreciate what somebody does, because I look at it almost like this. If you're a musician, we'll talk about that in a little while. If you're a musician and you're going out, you're playing to a CD, you're learning to try to play to that particular song. As a backyard wrestler, there are some people that are really trying to go out there and hone their craft, and also respect and love their appreciation of wrestling. Now, certainly, again, I wouldn't tell everybody to have a long career in backyard wrestling if you want to go into wrestling, but you have to respect what those who want to do in backyard wrestling, and those who go out there, in most cases, go out and do it on their own time and do it, and nobody's getting paid for the most part in backyard wrestling. So I could definitely appreciate all those things. And my crack staff, who is with us here and listening in the back and watching, has also informed me, Vinny, that a few other big name wrestlers also came out of Buffalo. And one of them I really missed, which I can't believe I missed. And I didn't really realize he was from Buffalo, which was Lex Luger. I mean, Lex Luger, I think, is a little bit of a bigger wrestler than Beth Phoenix was. No disrespect to Beth Phoenix, but Lex Luger, of course, former multiple-time world champion. So his documentary on A&E, the late Adrian Adonis, I didn't realize was from Buffalo. And Mikey Whipwreck was actually one of the first ECW world champions, was from Buffalo. So there's a number of different wrestlers from Buffalo, far more than I actually anticipated. Johnny Swinger is from Buffalo. I didn't realize that. Thank you to my crack staff. I mean, Johnny Swinger, I don't know if you know him. I remember him years ago in ECW, and he's still trugging along in Impact Wrestling. So Mark Merrow as well. Mark Merrow was a former Intercontinental Champion, former TV champion in WCW, and he was the guy married to Sable before Brock Lesnar. So those are some other names that have come up. So certainly that's some great stuff there to note. But when it comes to, obviously, this journey here and going into professional wrestling, and I mean, who are some of the professional wrestlers that you've looked up to aspire to want to now go and make this transition?
Um, well, as I said earlier, the wrestler from Buffalo, but I'm very, I'm a very big Seth Rollins fan. I've been
Okay.
watching him since he debuted at the Shield back in 2014, I believe, or 13.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and he was in, I think it was 2012, I think, was the Shield. And I think he was in NXT prior to that, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure
Yes, yes,
it was
that's correct.
2012. So, yep. Yep.
Um, I'm also a big John Moxley fan. I've been
Yep.
watching him
Well,
for a while.
just for you, just because it's actually out. That's the special AEW John Moxley card I pulled out. It's
That's
actually
awesome.
a special card there. So there you go.
That's
Former
awesome.
AEW multiple time world champion, and also, of course, former WWE world champion there. Yep.
Um, Cactus Jack will be one of them. All three faces of Mick Foley, to be honest with you.
Well,
Um,
that's I watched him when he was all three faces of Mick Foley. I watched him in WWE, and I watched in the old when I was a little kid getting into wrestling. I would watch him on the VHS and ECW as a little kid. We used to do tape, not quite. I didn't quite do tape trading, but I would buy tapes, and there was a kid in my English class that had recorded all these ECW matches. We're talking like 1999, 2000, and Cactus Jack was one of those guys I watched. So yeah, that's a small world.
that's really cool. I used to be a big John Cena fan also growing up.
All
Now
right.
I don't respect him. I don't really have a reason why I don't respect him. I'm just
Well,
not a
I
fan of his
mean,
work.
you know what? I mean, he was on SmackDown this past week, and you got to give him credit. 20 years, 20 calendar years, he's been out there. So I mean, I
Absolutely.
mean, some things, and I do have a couple comments for you. I want to get to our very good friend, Mr. C2K, and C2K says Vinny Meyers, the legend. And C2K says, from a legend to another, much respect. What does that mean to you? And we'll get to your
Um,
brother in about 10 or 15 minutes. But what does that mean to you when you have another backyard wrestling legend, C2K, give you those words?
well, I want to start by saying thank you, C2K, for saying that. I respect you also. I'm very familiar with Rochester backyard wrestling. Um, I don't know if they call it still that. I'm not sure. I think it's Rising Pro or Rising Star or something like that. Um, but I think that's love, you know. And I'm not going to say that just because of what happened with the Bills yesterday.
Yeah, very, very, very sad. Yeah, very, very sad. What's going out there? Certainly, it's shooken
Absolutely.
the sports world. I mean, there is one thing I've seen similar to this, unfortunately, and I don't know how old you are, but I remember Owen Hart, unfortunately, over the edge, 1999. He had died on the pay per view. Dark Side of the Ring did a documentary on this. I believe it was this past year, and I remember as a kid they actually continued the show, and that was something that I to this day I don't understand why they did. And thankfully, the NFL had made the decision not to continue that game, just of the ramifications of Damar Hamlin. But obviously, if you're a Buffalo person right now, when you look at right now the Bills very well could be the favorites to win the Super Bowl, and then this to happen. I mean, it's a
Absolutely.
tough thing.
It's a nightmare. It really is. Especially, I believe Sunday's our last game. Well, the
Against the
Bills' last game
Patriots.
against Patriots, yes, and that's a home
Again,
game.
and it's a game that means a lot for both teams right now at the moment. Who knows now what's going to happen? I mean, I couldn't tell you, and I don't think anybody knows at this point because people have never, in the league themselves, have never been in that situation. So it's certainly scary times. And also, C2K wants to say, but one day a match between you and I needs to happen. Whoever loses buys the beer. So what's your favorite drink then?
Me, I'm not much of a drinker, to be honest with you.
All right, fair enough. Well,
Not
I guess
much.
then we can figure out the type of drink. Maybe a soda, maybe something else. He also
Absolutely.
says much love to you, and I
Much
mean,
love to you also. And
absolutely. Yep, gotta jump in.
and I think it'll be cool to have a match against C2K. Along
C2K, he's been doing it. He has been doing this. If you heard last week on the show, he's been doing this since 91. I mean, 91. I don't even have memories of 91 in wrestling. C2K has been doing this in this journey since, I mean, he literally is the Undertaker of backyard wrestling. I mean, C2K,
literally.
I mean, he's literally, listen, when he was starting out, it was just the beginnings of the Undertaker. Think about this business. I mean, C2K is really the true chameleon.
Absolutely. I wasn't even born yet when he started. I was born in I was born in the year of 2000, so that only makes me 22 years old.
So that means C2K is got a few years on you then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I might have to look up to him next. Who knows? You know?
Well, we'll certainly find out. And C2K gives a laugh, and he also says, maybe dinner. Well, maybe dinner, maybe
Yeah,
dinner here, and I wanted to talk about this, and I promise we'll get your brother on here in about 5 or 10 minutes, and I see he's waiting here, and
absolutely.
we'll spend the next 20 or so minutes with him and kind of get some of his thoughts. But you kind of touched upon it, and you've done some music, and you're working on music, and I mean, I have to almost ask you the dumb question: Are you going to be working on your own music for your ring entrances when you debut as a professional wrestler there, Vinny Meyers?
Well, I'm not going to say too much about that yet
Okay.
because I have a lot of things planned.
Okay.
So, as a person that makes his own music under name Cremation Kovacs, I've been doing a lot of shows. I do a
Hmm.
lot of shows and make a lot of music. But there's one thing I've always wanted to do, and that was start my own alcohol line. So,
Oh wow.
so
Okay.
as a person that doesn't really drink, this shall be a little hard to fix
Well.
the flavors up, to
Hmm.
do everything with it. But that's something I have planned. Currently, going to be in the works as of next month.
Wow. So we're going to start an alcohol line. I mean, I would imagine you've really thought this through, and maybe you have the funding for this, and you've got maybe the advertising lined up. Because when I think about starting a business, especially to that ramification, I mean, you got to have some serious dough lined up there. So hopefully, you've got that all planned. I mean, don't tell us what you're gonna do. Don't tell us how it's gonna plan out. But I know one thing as somebody and myself that has always looked at going into business, you got to have the resources. Hopefully, you have those.
I absolutely do have it. I have a great team behind me.
Okay. All
Um,
right. And
Very much close friends,
okay.
as
That's good.
well of the support of my girlfriend, which is actually my profile picture.
I
She's
see. Yep.
a
I see your very beautiful girlfriend there. Yep.
she's very great. She's amazing, and I really appreciate everything she does. You know,
Oh,
She's helped me with shows. She's been by my side from wrestling to music, and I feel very lucky to have her. You know what I mean?
well,
Because her
sounds like
support,
you've. Yep. Sounds like you got a great girlfriend there.
absolutely, her support means the world to me. So I
All
wouldn't
right.
be here without her.
Well, I could certainly see why, and obviously, you definitely have punched above your weight class when it comes to your girlfriend. I mean that obviously in a compliment, of course. And coming back, and I'll get to two more comments. C2K says he'll be the first to test the beer. Also, Adam Morgan, who's been with us, and I think I owe Adam an appearance on Sportswire very soon, says woo. Also says great girlfriends. Of course, you got to have a better half because you got to have that support system. And I want to go back to the music in a second before I bring on your brother here in a few minutes, and we'll talk a little bit about getting some of his thoughts on you. But I mean, when it comes to music, in terms of that preparation versus wrestling, talk to me about maybe the similarities and the differences.
Um, what do you mean by that question? Like,
So,
where
I
does
mean,
my music come
obviously,
from?
well, I mean, first of all, as a wrestler, you obviously have to prepare for a match, whether it's a backyard match, whether it's a professional match. But as a musician, like how do what are maybe the similarities in preparation when I think about being a musician, right? You have to spend different points of the day or different mindset you get into, and you spend different ways and prepare. Some people just go up there. If you're a singer, you just go up and you have to do certain vocal warm-ups, or if you're a guitarist, you do your almost your finger exercise. And I remember famously my father, who played, would always have one of these like little almost like a hand stretcher, and you'd kind of go like this with it. I mean, so just give me some maybe
Um,
similarities and differences when you kind of get into that music mindset to get ready for a song to compose and a wrestling match.
well, I do want to say it's a bit different for me. Like for if I'm getting ready for a match, I won't talk to anyone in the back. I really won't. I'll put on my headphones and get in the zone. You know, start warming up a little bit, or sometimes before the show, I'll get there 3 4 hours earlier and I'll take specifically bumps on the
Okay.
mat, just to get my body used to the feeling again. Because as I said earlier, I'm injury protocol, so I have to be very careful
Yep.
of what I
Yep.
do.
You have to be very careful. You certainly, if you're in injury protocol, that could be a process. And I'm also curious here in terms of just what type of music do you compose, and who are some of the influences that you have when it comes to the music world and such.
Um, in 2016, I started a band called Dead Reflection. That was a post-hardcore band. We looked up to bands like Silverstein, Hawthorne Heights, Census
Yep, I know.
Fail,
Mm-hmm.
Motionless and White, Ice Nine
Mm-hmm.
Kills, bands like those.
Okay.
But then in 2018, when I started wrestling, I didn't really want to be in a band anymore. I got bored. There was so much going on, so much rules to be in a band, you know. So I did my own thing. I made my own record. I made a lot of friends. It was pretty cool. And specifically, I want to give a big shout out because the reason I make music now is actually because I'm not sure if you know this artist, Benny the Butcher.
Yes. Yes, I do. Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
he's the reason why I started rapping and everything else along that genre.
Okay, it's very nice, very nice. Certainly, I could certainly see all that great stuff here, and I always thought that music and wrestling, of course, go hand in hand. So I could certainly see that, and I think a lot of ways some of the hardcore and the I guess some of those bands I say might cross over more into rock or heavy metal, maybe more hard rock on the edge. Some of those bands you mentioned, I mean, there is certainly metallic influences there. Definitely go hand in hand in wrestling. I think about NXT, and I think about even places like AEW or AEW. You see constant borrowing of or actually buying certain songs, and you might, if you have a dog barking, we're going to put you on mute for a second. But we are here on Sportswire Radio, speaking all things related here to the journey of the legendary former Russian nightmare turned nightmare, Vinny Anarchy. He is now Vinny Meyers, and he is getting ready to be a professional wrestler coming up here shortly on Sportswire Radio. And we will be here also with his brother very shortly. So we're looking forward to speaking with him in a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, while we let Vinny get sorted into a better room. If you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, you can always give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. And we'll also be back here tomorrow with, of course, one half of the reigning defending CCW Tag Team Champions. That is Dustin Hart of the CWO. We'll also be back Friday with, of course, the heart and soul of KOW Knockout Wrestling. That is Booker, promoter, ALP. We'll talk all things KOW, get you ready for the next show. We'll recap the historic show, the 10th anniversary show, plus much, much more. We are here on Sportsfire Radio, and we will make sure. Vinny, are you in a better spot now, Vinny? Does the dog not
Absolutely, I
barking
am.
anymore? All
Yes,
right, so we're
I'm
gonna
very
bring
sorry about
on.
my dog.
Hey, listen, it happens. Trust me. That's the beauty of live radio. Anything can happen. Yesterday, we had on the guys from the Pipe On Wrestling podcast, and they were literally just outside Nashville, outside of Raw. So things happen, and we're gonna bring on here your brother now. Here, your brother who's with us here, and how you doing there, my friend?
I can't complain.
Okay, I can barely hear you there, but hopefully we'll sort that out. And certainly didn't expect you to come on there. But for those that are listening and watching, I mean, talk about maybe some of the legendary wars that you and your brother had. I think he's frozen on us. So
I believe
uh,
so.
so you know what? Your brother's probably not doesn't look like best for the camera. We can bring him on another time. I'm going to be totally
Absolutely.
honest. So unfortunately, you're going to have to tell your brother we're going to finish the rest of this segment here. You got to have a shirt on at least. I'm sorry about that,
Absolutely.
um, but I mean, is there one or two moments? I mean, I think of one or two moments in your career and winning those titles in the FWE, and talk about the North American Championship first and what that meant to you.
um, to be honest with you, I didn't really feel anything with that title.
You
You
didn't.
know, I didn't feel like I achieved much because I won it my first pay per view there. Well, yeah, my first pay per view there. It was against Crucifix, I believe. I believe his name was Crucifix. Um, that match was so unorganized. You know, there wasn't communication in that match. No one was told who was going to win or anything else. So I thought I was going to lose because he was the champion and he's been there longer
Mm.
than I have.
Mm.
And so I went for the pin. I let him pin me. The referee made it to 3, but they kept the match going on, which very kind of confused me. I didn't know what was happening. I was like, what do I do? Then after he picked me up for a power bomb, and I kind of got off him, and I hit him with the curb stomp, and that's how I won the belt.
Wow.
And I don't think that's very entertaining in my eyes. I want to put on a show. I don't want it to be a lackey kind of show worth 1 star. I want to put on 5. I want to put on 5-star matches. Like, I feel like my point of wrestling, where I'm at now, I feel like I'm head over like toes, basically. I'm like the best. Like, they can't touch me in wrestling because I'm so passionate about this. I love what I do. I love putting on matches. I love wrestling in general since I was a little baby. And so that's why I think I'm the best. And
Well, you know
where
what? You could be. You could be. You never know. Listen, you never know.
absolutely. Um, the other championship, the Extreme Championship, I've related with that championship in many ways because I love hardcore wrestling. I'm a big, big Jimmy Havoc fan. I look up to him. You know, his music, he listens to everything. He's my favorite wrestler of all time. Which is kind of strange because so many people won't say that. So that's why I've related with the Extreme Championship because I love hardcore wrestling. I love death matches. Like Japanese death matches. Those are my favorite matches to watch. Um, that's why I've related with that championship so much, and I do miss being that specific champion. I do miss it, but January 15th starts a new journey, and hopefully I win some gold there.
And I have a comment for you here from Adam Morgan. Have you ever broke a glass on someone's face? That is hardcore. I don't want to repeat the last
No,
part, but
I have
I, I
not.
don't I don't think I would want to do that. I guess Adam's being somewhat facetious, but I mean, I almost have to ask you a silly question. You probably chuckle when you hear this. And I asked C2K the same question, so I'll have to ask you the question. So when you won these titles, whether it was the FWE North American or the Extreme title, did they allow you to keep the belt?
No,
They didn't. Okay, because some
no,
wrestlers, because we speak with a lot of wrestlers, and in the UK, we're very lucky to have a big following on Sportswire, and I would speak with some of the wrestlers, and when some of them had won their company's world championship, some companies would actually allow them to keep the title, and they would feel this big responsibility because the company spends a lot of money on making these championships, and then they have to carry them around. They have to make sure if people can see them, but it's a very very different thing here. And the lawman Kyle Kennedy wants me to interview wrestlers. Well, actually, Vinny, the lawman Kyle Kennedy is training to be a wrestler. So let's certainly talk about that and such. And I mean, when you get into the ring, what's that feeling going to be in the first time you go out there in the ring for that first match?
I think my first match is gonna be legendary. I'm gonna put a lot of work into it. Hopefully, I'll have my whole family there, along with my girlfriend and her family. I think that'll be special, especially if I get a victory. I think that'd be really cool.
And the lawman Kyle Kennedy wants me to interview him, which of course you're going to be back on Sportswire Radio. I actually had an announcement in a few minutes toward the end of the show that you might actually be curious about. That I think you might actually want to stay tuned for. Tuned for. So I think that you'll certainly appreciate that shortly. And Adam says we do let people keep belts, but they don't get to keep the ref shirts no more. People lose clothes all the time. Yeah, I never thought about that. Do the referees actually get to keep their shirts in professional wrestling? I never actually thought about, do referees actually keep those shirts or they give them back? That's actually a good question here. I mean, that's something that
That's a very good question. I have a close friend that is actually a referee in Empire State Wrestling.
Okay.
Daniel Garcia, Kevin Blackwood, and such. Puff,
Yep.
the Butcher and Blade, all started there. As far as I know, my friend, he does keep the ref shirts. As far as I know,
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I've been to his house a few times for like parties and stuff. And he does have like 6 referee shirts from that company.
Lucky him. Let me ask you another question on the music end before I come back to my few announcements toward the end of the show here. When it comes to the music side, I know you said you do some composing, you do some music. I mean, there are very well-known people that make music. I mean, Jimmy Hart had for years made it in WCW, and Jim Johnson, of course, in the WWE. And although Tony Khan's basically buying most of the theme songs now for the AEW talent, and Impact had them for a while, and I thought they did actually a pretty good job with them. But is that something as a fallback you'd want to do? Maybe compose music for other wrestlers out there? Because I mean, I mentioned it, wrestling and music do go hand in hand. I mean, I do think that there's a big market for that, and I've spoken with wrestlers from all over the place, and it's a big deal in terms of having your own theme song composed. It's not that easy to do. I mean, I can do a little bit of editing. I mean, full disclosure, I actually have a program, and I've done a few different things with Wrestling Championship Entertainment, but it's a lot of copy paste and editing, and that's not the same as actually. So have you ever thought about, hey, maybe I could go out and be a Jim Johnston or somebody else like that? And talk to me about that.
I've had it sit in the back of my brain for a very long time. The first time I heard, again, Daniel Garcia's theme song, and when they did that episode in September in Buffalo, where West Side Gun came out and did his theme song, I was like, oh, West Side Gun, I know personally. I never would have thought he'd do something like this. But again, he's a very big wrestling fan, and so am I. So
we saw Bad Bunny. Listen, 2 years ago, Bad Bunny was a part of the WWE for a while. I mean, to me, we see Rick Ross in AEW. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of crossover between music and wrestling. It's not like it used to be. I mean, there's basically, you see it all the time. I mean, you've seen, it's a whole list of people that we've seen, whether it's in WWE, AEW, Impact. I mean, Billy Corgan himself, right? Billy Corgan, who's part of probably one of the premier rock bands of the 1990s, the Smashing Pumpkins. He's the owner of the NWA. I mean, that in itself is all you need to know. So there's definitely a lot of crossover.
Absolutely. So maybe someday I'll work on theme music. But as of right now, I am very focused on training, taking care of my health, and starting my own business line.
Well, certainly the business line with the alcohol, we'll certainly hope that works out. And I wanted to ask you here before we get to a few more questions and closing thoughts, what are your goals for 2023?
My goals: win some championships when I officially debut. Um, get medically cleared to go on and wrestle, and have success with my alcohol line. That's one thing I'm very, very passionate about.
All right. I think that's going to be certainly things that we're going to keep an eye on here, and we'll certainly hope that, fingers crossed, you make it in the business world. And listen, you never know. I mean, listen, Arizona iced tea everybody drinks here in New York, right? The dollar tall boys, or it's $1.25 now. And you got the big cans, and it was started as a dream. And local guy here in New York City starts his own business, and you never know what can happen. And the lawman Kyle Kennedy wishes me Happy New Year. Yes, and I want to get to that very quickly when it comes to nonstop action wrestling. In fact, we will have full nonstop action fatal attraction coverage starting out here in 2 weeks, because we will have on the Society's Remus Kane. So the lawman Kyle Kennedy might want to pay attention to that, because we will have on Mr. Remus Kane here, and there's going to be a lot to speak about with him. It's going to be on January the 18th. We'll probably have it around 8 o'clock or so, and we'll speak with Remus Kane. He's got a lot going on right now when it comes to the society, whether it's Wrestling Appreciation Society. We saw the announcement today. We also saw some news here with Nonstop Action Wrestling throughout the week, and we saw Remus was a huge part of things in the Northern Division title tournament, and we know that the society is very close to getting gold. We'll also see the guys at the Tommy Dillon Wrestling for Kirkwood Life Hospice event. So there's a lot going on. Very, very excited to be speaking with Remus Kane. Then on January the 24th, at around 8:30, we're also going to be speaking with, and it's a very, very intriguing segment, with the return of Young Horus. And something tells me here that Dan Robertson, the Cult of Killjoy, and who knows, maybe who else in Nonstop Action Wrestling might be paying attention to that. So you can follow Nonstop Action Wrestling on Facebook at Nonstop Action Wrestling, YouTube Nonstop Action Wrestling, NSAW Wrestling _UK on Instagram, and NSAW Rest _UK on Twitter as well. So looking forward to being with those guys, and we will also have Disciple on as well before the GT Ministries show, who's, by the way, the Nonstop Action Wrestling World Class Champion, as well as the GT Ministries World Champion. But Vinny, I wanted to ask you then, when some people say that backyard wrestling or glorified stuntman, like a professional wrestler in the lawman Kyle Kennedy, how does that maybe motivate you into now going and making that transition to being a professional wrestler?
I honestly believe it motivates me because I have to show specific people how good I am. That, yes, I was a backyard wrestler, but I'm not afraid to learn more than what I know. You know, sometimes you'll have people saying, you're not good, you know, and everything else, where, oh, that light's bright. Back to what I was saying, though, sometimes you have people look down on you as a backyard wrestler, which I think people don't give enough credit specifically to backyard wrestlers, because yes, we do it for fun, but we also hurt ourselves doing it also.
Yeah, no, listen, you can't fake gravity, you can't fake pain, and certainly
Exactly.
there's definitely a lot of that out there for sure in the backyard wrestling world here. So I want to ask you then this last question. What do you want to say to anybody that has supported you, gone along with you in this journey, and now what seems to be like the potential for a huge 2023 for you, whether it's the music, the business venture, and now becoming a professional wrestler? What do you want to say to everybody that has supported you so far?
I want to say thank you very much to everyone who supported me. I really love your support. I wouldn't be here without you guys. And that's basically it. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the Rev for having me on the show. I look forward to coming on again, maybe in a few months with the good news.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be good
Um,
news. Listen, let your hearts not be troubled. I see everybody that
exactly.
says, "Oh, 2023. I don't know if it's going to be good because the economy and world events and the wars." I'm like, no, no, no. Trust me. We're starting out new. It's always good to start out new, and certainly we go out, it's out with the old, in with the new. And something tells me here, whatever happened in the past, let your hearts not be troubled. I have a very good feeling that 2023 is going to be a huge year for you, and certainly a huge year in all the great things that you're doing. And I know your brother tried to get back on. I apologize. We'll definitely get your brother on here as well when he's got some
Definitely.
better technical difficulties. But now I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug where we can contact and connect with you, and anything else that's on your mind you want to say to us before we get out of here? And obviously, it's a tremendous honor to have you. I look forward to speaking with you in a couple of months when certainly a lot more things are on the pike and on the plate for you, and you're going to hit them out of the park. So, floor is yours. Anything you want to plug, share, say for us on Sportswire Radio, fire away.
Well, I want to say thank you again for having me on the show. If you want to follow my music, you can look me up on Instagram at Cremation Kovacs. That's Kovacs with a K, Kovax, and cremation. I have tons of my stuff on there.
Yeah, DM me that, or post that in the chat, because the spelling I missed, and I want to make sure I follow that stuff. So when we get off, definitely make sure you put that in the comment section so we can all check that
Absolutely.
out.
And I do want to say I do want to travel more for wrestling. If you want to wrestle against me, if anyone wants to wrestle against me, message me. Let's set it up. I will directly drive to your state or fly
Ooh,
to your
well,
state and
I'll
fight
tell
on
you
your
what.
turf.
Well, if you want to go into backyard wrestling or professional wrestling, well, backyard wrestling, I can certainly let the good people at Wrestling Championship Entertainment know about you, and I can have somebody there message you maybe this evening, so we can certainly
Absolutely.
get in touch about that as well. So maybe that could be something in the future there. Never say never, because their season starts out in April, because they're in Wisconsin. So I know you guys have done some cold weather stuff, but they like to wait until the weather is warm, so that way they can keep the ring up and such. So that could be maybe something we might see in the future of you.
Absolutely. I think it might happen. I'm
Never. Hmm.
Yes, I am starting to go into professional wrestling, but I will never back out from a challenge.
I got a feeling that challenges are going to be accepted, and you are definitely going to be somebody that I have no doubt is going to be doing some big things out there, not just in the wrestling world. So, my friend, congratulations on all the success. I definitely look forward to speaking with you very soon. And we'll definitely speak, and I hope to see you achieve all your dreams, and maybe a little more.
Thank you very much. Like I said, it's an honor being a part of the show. I've watched this for a very long time, and you're a great man.
Oh,
You
I
know,
appreciate that. I really appreciate. I'll let the people know that somebody's given me an endorsement and said that I'm a great man. I'll certainly let my family know about that. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I
yeah,
definitely hope to meet you. I definitely hope to meet you. You're in New York. I hope
absolutely.
that we can connect and certainly meet in person. I know you're on the other side of the state, and you're actually up in the state. You're almost by the Canadian border. But listen,
Yes,
never say never out there. And I'm sure when the weather warms up, maybe we can get together and you come to New York City, and I'll make sure to make sure you're taken care of, and we'll have a good time. And definitely look forward to see the future from you, my friend.
absolutely. I do want to say one thing before I log out.
Sure.
Damon is actually from New York City. He's from the Bronx,
Oh,
and
okay.
and I've actually been trying to plug something in with him about going with him to New York City because I've only
Hmm.
been to Times Square handful of times. I've never been to
Wow.
Brooklyn, never been to Bronx, never been to anywhere in New York City. So I
Well,
hope that
well,
happens soon.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you and Damien definitely want to come into the city, I'll make sure that we definitely meet up, all three of us. And I would have to say Manhattan, maybe Joe's Pizza. I'm sure Damien might have heard of it. Joe's Pizza is on Carmine Street, right off 6th Avenue. That's a great place. Or I'm sure downtown Manhattan as well. So all great stuff. And definitely I look forward to maybe making that happen.
Absolutely. Again, thank you very much. It was an honor talking to you.
Absolutely, and I want to thank here Mr. Vinny Meyers, who you formerly knew in FWE as the Russian Nightmare, then turned Nightmare. He also had held the FWE North American Extreme Championships of the World. He was also a big star here in Backyard Wrestling and some other places, and now he's making the transition to professional wrestling. You're also going to see him coming up with some new music out there, also an alcohol line, more details to follow. He'll give us the details on the music as well so we can subscribe and follow to those pages. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I am the man behind Sportswire Radio. We'll be back here tomorrow with more coverage from CCW with one half of the CCW Tag Team Champions, Dustin Hart of the CWO. Friday Night Live, 8:30 p.m., the heart and soul of KOW, Booker Promoter ALP. We'll speak all things related to KOW. We'll also be back here coming up on the 9th of January with John the Rock Jackson, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And January 18th, now announced, Nonstop Action Wrestling's Remus Kane from the Society. He has not been here in a while. He's got a lot in his mind, a lot to say. Definitely want to hear what he has to say. You're going to want to tune into that. We're also going to have on here from Nonstop Action Wrestling, Young Horace and Dan Robertson, and maybe someone from management, because it seems like these two cannot get along with each other after what happened at Nuclear Winter. And something tells me here, maybe they'll see each other in a ring down the road. Who knows? Oh, I don't know. Fatal Attractions coming up on February the 11th, plus much more. So if you are on Sportswire Radio, please continue to give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. And we'll also be back here with more CCW coverage coming up here with Mr. BMD. And BMD is going to be in the house here next week. Very, very excited to be with BMD. So excited about that. So we'll see. And thank everybody here for tuning in on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. Thank you again to Vinny Meyers.